Okay, and you may be seated. And Shabbat Shalom and Mazel Tov to Emmy and your whole family celebrating this Shabbat. So last Sunday morning, I told the following story with our religious school children. It's about a man named Honi, and it comes from the Talmud. Honi was walking through the woods and saw a woman planting a carob tree sapling. Knowing that a carob tree takes 70 years to grow and to bear fruit, he asks her, puzzled, "Why are you going to plant something, to go to all this effort to plant this tree that you'll never even get to see the fruit of or benefit from?" The woman didn't stop her planting but replied, "My ancestors planted carob trees so that one day I could taste their fruit. And now I'm doing the same for my descendants." This story is one of my favorites, as it makes a statement about what it means to look to the future, about what it means to pass a legacy down, about what we mean when we say Ledor Vador, from generation to generation. With this week's parasha, Toldot, translating as generations, I've been reflecting on what it means to be part of this Jewish chain of transmission and to pass this inheritance along to the next generation. As always, Torah has a few suggestions that might guide us. It might firstly mean not being afraid to ask the tough questions about purpose. At the beginning of Toldot, pregnant with the twins, Jacob and Esau, Rebecca feels them jostling and wrestling in her womb, and she asks, "Lama ze anochi? Why do I exist?" In other words, what is all this for, this struggle and this upset and this difficulty? God does not answer, despite Rebecca's direct inquiry. At its core, it is an existential question. For, as Rabbi Stacy Riegler points out, Rebecca was not asking about her physical pain. She is lamenting why, after so much anticipation, this much desired pregnancy is proving so tough, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. Put differently, Rebecca was asking about purpose. To that poignant wondering of hers, perhaps there is no answer, or at least not a simple one. However, renowned psychoanalyst and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl teaches us in his book Man's Search for Meaning that a sense of purpose is crucial for inculcating a will to survive and to thrive. This is what he noticed in the concentration camps and later took into his professional life. That inner purpose and inner reason for existence was an essential factor for determining a person's likely outcome. If that's true of us as individuals, then kal v'chomer, how much more so might this apply to us as a Jewish people? In fact, we were discussing this very idea in our senior leadership team meeting this past Tuesday as part of our weekly study, which begins our proceedings. A very wise person, our own Rabbi Splansky, suggested that maybe it was this struggle that was the very reason for our existence. Perhaps elaborating on these thoughts, we are the answer to our own question as we grapple and we search and we constantly ask, why? If we are able to articulate our purpose, that is to say who we are, where we come from, and why we do what we do, then it seems far more probable that the next generation will catch on to how important it is to us and how much fulfillment it brings, and they will find their own purpose in turn. If we want an example, we can just look at our bat mitzvah and her family today. It is indeed a tough question to ask, but I would suggest that if we don't have our why, then we can't expect anyone else to feel as connected or engaged or to have their own why either. Yet, I'd posit that whilst the next generation will spin their own twist, it means that we bear responsibility for giving them the tools that they need to make an informed choice. This phrase, informed choice, is a watchword for our Reformed Jewish movement, coined by one of our prominent theologians, Eugene Borowitz, who wrote that, "Understanding the essential humanity of Jewish ritual endows us with the right to decide which traditional acts we shall still do or not do. More excitingly, it empowers us to create the new rites needed to express better our present-day Jewishness." Put differently, when we analyze the human touch, that Torah and our other sacred texts were, in our eyes, divinely inspired, though not from God's self, that Judaism has shifted and evolved since Bereshit, the beginning, transitioning from a system of animal sacrifice to the system of study and worship we know today, and that to be Jewish means to constantly be in tension with our tradition and the modern world, we are empowered to make decisions that make sense for us in the 21st century. That being said, with the greatest respect for his teacher, our colleague Rabbi Daniel Kurzan elaborates on the sentiments of Rabbi Borowitz, reminding us that this does not mean that we can do whatever we want. Our texts are still sacred, still come with their thousands of years of history and values, stories and debates, and so on. They are also thought, and were certainly thought of by their ancient compilers, as true records of true encounters with the divine. So who are we to dismiss them completely? We therefore approach them with a sense of reverence and care, and occupy ourselves with the eternal struggle of la'asok b'divrei Torah, engaging with the words of Torah as we turn them and turn them and turn them again. We may find that they resonate in our modern times, or they may not, and we can either incorporate them, adapt them, or set them aside in good consciousness. We may not feel the need to follow it or observe a particular Jewish practice or custom, but this notion of informed choice is an invitation to again ask why before turning away entirely. It's something I speak about with many of our own congregants, from wedding couples to bereaved families, that I view my task as being there to support them, of course, but that I'm there also to give them the framework, and they can decide accordingly how they want to engage with it, as long as they have learned and reflected and considered. For example, because we find Isaac at the end of his life in Toldot, I'll use the example of a mourner and tell them that the traditional period of mourning for, let's say, a parent is 11 months, and that Holy Blossom has hybrid services, usually twice a day, at which Kaddish is said. Some will take up the offer and be here for every service, all 11 months. Others might come in the evening after work. Others might come twice a week on Torah days. Others might come every day for Shloshim, the first month. Yet others might come on Shabbat. They might come in person, online, a combination of both. In all cases, what feels important is that they have been given the grounding in our tradition and all the options that our congregation has for them and for us to fulfill the mitzvah of nichum avelim, of comforting the mourner, and that they can then make the appropriate choices for them, their families, and their lives. As we encourage and educate the next generation, transmitting our tradition might lastly mean rooting our teaching in love. With the relationship between Isaac and Rebekah being the central love story of our last two parashiyot, our two portions, it might be interesting to note that they are the only couple, and certainly the first couple, described in Torah as loving one another, with Genesis chapter 24, a little bit back, stating, Vayeh ehaveha, and he, Isaac, loved her, Rebekah. Our sages teach us that Isaac loved Rebekah almost immediately upon being able to identify qualities within her, such as modesty and kindness, that he admired in other women in his life, namely his mother Sarah, who has died by this junction in our Torah. It brings Isaac great comfort and gives him the strength to pursue building a life and a home with his new wife. In other words, when we not only identify a purpose, but identify the reasons that we love our Jewish heritage and everything that comes along with it, that enthusiasm will be infectious, even inspirational, to those you wish to share it with. It is this foundation of love that Rabbi Shai Held, the dean of the Hadar Institute in New York, believes that Judaism is and must be built upon. You might remember him from his visit to us back at Slichot in late September as he taught us from his book, Judaism is About Love. For Rabbi Held, love in our Jewish tradition is a blend between action and emotion, the planting of the seeds and the intention with which it was done, like Honi and his friend. To quote Rabbi Held, Judaism is about what you do, why you do it, and how you do it. It asks for deeds of love done from love. It thereby becomes a life orientation and an inherent way of conducting ourselves in the world. He posits that love may be core to the understanding of our tradition, pointing to the name of God of Rahmana, which can be translated as mercy or compassion, but also love. This leads some philosophers to render the term Rahmana not simply as the merciful one, like Harachaman that we find in the Birkat HaMazon, our prayer after meals. Maybe just as accurately, they render God's name as the loving one. Similarly to Rabbi Kurzan, Rabbi Held looks at the notion of choice as part of his love-based approach to Judaism. He holds firm that God chose to create us out of love. Therefore, we too, with the Torah and its teachings to guide us, may not always follow the path of love, but we are certainly capable of choosing it. As we conclude, we at Holy Blossom are mindful of choosing a number of opportunities for intergenerational spaces to create these special and meaningful intergenerational memories. From our Tot and Family Shabbat morning services, including next Saturday, December 7, our Gifts of Light interfaith concert featuring musicians from all generations on December 8th, our Hanukkah celebrations creeping ever closer, including our family and congregational Hanukkah celebrations on December 15 and 27. There's always something for all our members of all ages and stages to participate in together as one. Just as our ancestors did for us, so too do we plant the seeds and kindle the lights of the loving and inquiring minds of the future, from Sinai to Torah to today, L'dor Vador, from generation to generation. Shabbat Shalom.